dear colleagues, I'm a neuroscientist and physician from Norway, and I will talk about new scientific results about the human brain in the political and social sphere. So it will be a slightly dialectical talk. I will talk first a little bit optimistic, and then I come with some more pessimistic insights, and I will conclude with things what have to be done in my view. Okay, simply introducing what social neuroscience is. This is a way we use the neuroscientific methods to investigate the human brain. We're using pictures, imaging methods, we're using computational methods, we're using classical psychophysiological methods. And recently, a new term was introduced by John Jost, which is the political neuroscience. And in principle, we do the same thing, but the focus is slightly different because we are interested in what is happening in the brain during political interactions, what is predisposing in the brain that we choose some political actions or not. So this is quite a new field as addressed by John Jost. I will give you shortly 4 arguments. The first one is the slightly optimistic one, that the structures and principles of the human brain support democratic and socialistic attitudes and behavior. I will give you some evidence that the leftist and the right-wing brain are different, essentially on the group level. I will talk about that our world is changing very fast, and this has implications on our brain and our way to think and resonate and feel. And then I will talk about that the modern digitalized world triggers a shift to the right-wing thinking in the brain. The first thing, simply very short, what should you know about your brain? It is your brain is like a muscle. If you use your functions, if you use your brain in a certain way, new connections will appear. It will work better. This mechanism works in any age, also in the young ones better, in the older ones not. And my classical example are London taxi drivers who are used to use their special orientation in the brain, located in a place called the hippocampus, and you can not really see, but it is slightly greater in picture, in imaging, when they have more than 20 years of experience. And we can show this in artists, and we can show this in a lot of different people. And to understand what I'm telling, another thing is important. We have a motivation center in our brain, which makes that we eat or not eat, that we like something or don't like thing, that we take action or not action. And this motivation center is also plastic. It is highly adaptive. It can change over time, and most importantly, it can be hijacked by mechanisms like drugs, which is classical, but also by media and by other highly addictive structures. And the final thing about the brain is simply to tell that we have now identified quite clearly brain regions which are involved in social and political reasoning and cognition, and maybe the two most important ones regarding the brain are the amygdala, associated with fear, mentioned here, and not really visible the insula, which is very closely related to a disgust feeling, and I will show you why I mention this. But what do you need for democracy and socialism? There are much more properties, but we could tell sense of justice, cooperation, the ability for political decision making, and empathy for others is quite crucial. And not surprisingly, perhaps all these basic building blocks are represented already in the animal sphere, depending on the level. such as sense of justice, which is established in several primates. Cooperation has been proposed to a main rule of evolution, general evolution, by Martin Nowak recently. Political decision-making comes from advanced cognitive decision mechanisms to make food risk choices, and empathy is also already represented in in some animals. And I will show you a simple example to make you awake. This is an experiment, and this is an experiment from the Van der Waal lab. I borrowed it, this is on the net. What is done? These are monkeys, and they have learned a simple task. They give a stone, and they get a reward, a cucumber. And they like cucumber, but they like even more grapes. This monkey makes the task, gives the stone, gets the grape, is happy. And the other is observing it. So it's giving the stone, and he's getting a cucumber, not a grape. And see what happens. He is really enraged. He does not like the cucumber because the other monkey is getting a grape. Okay, we repeat this. He is really enraged. The other one makes the task, gives the stone, gets the reward. Now he is getting the stone. He's testing the stone. Is it the right stone? Yes, it is. He gives the stone. He gets the cucumber, and look what happens. He is really enraged. He does not like it. It's unjust to get cucumbers with other get grapes. This looks simple, where there are a lot of experiments showing that the basis block of justice feeling is already represented in some animals. Okay, this was my first point. My second point is that the conservative personality and brain is maybe slightly different to the leftist brain. And the conservative personality psychologically has been investigated in many years, beginning with very basic work of Adorno, for instance. Recently it was concluded that the conservative personality has as typical traits more fear, higher death anxiety, intolerance to ambiguity, and decreased openness to new experiences. And this, when we're talking about the brain, should have its impact on the brain. And indeed, when we look in the case of disgust, the last year a couple of investigations has shown that if you're showing disgusting things, the conservative brain is processing is very differently to the leftist brain. They just perceive the world in a different way, not in a worse way, not in a better way. This is not the point. The point is they perceive it in a different way, and this is important. And if we go back to the simple way not too simple way to look on the brain, we can look that their region associated with fear is on the group level slightly increased compared with the leftist brain. And the sphere associated with openness to new experiences and curiosity is slightly increased compared to the conservative brain. So we can find this on the brain level. This has been replicated, interesting findings. But what happens in our world? Our world changes very lot, and you can find a lot of factors. I chose to distinguish between something I call biological factors, sleep duration, food choice, obesity, and social factors like internet use and reading decreasing, internet use increasing. And this should make something with our plastic brain. And yes, it does. For the first thing, this is a new report published in Science a couple of weeks ago about so-called fake news. And what is, for instance, is we process fake news differently depending on the age. And when we know that the mean age of the population is increasing in most countries in the world, this has clearly an impact in the way we have a political cognition. It should be. Another piece of work was published recently of Jean Dwenger. It is investigation looking of self-esteem and happiness in adolescents in the last 15 years. US adolescents, more than 150,000 were investigated. And as you see, it was slightly increasing, then it was happening something, and there is a sharp decrease after 2008. And the same thing can be shown in happiness. It is increasing, everything looks good, and something in 2008 is happening. And the economists of you know, of course, that in 2008 there was something happening, there was an economical crisis. This could be a good explanation, but something different happened also in 2008. It was the introduction of the smartphone. And Jean Twenge showed statistically that it was mainly the introduction of the smartphone and use of the smartphone which changed the direction of self-esteem and happiness. And she was even able to show that people being active in sports, having social contacts, have intact belief systems, and are reading, are more happy, and adolescents looking more on the TV, using more social media, and have less social contacts are less happy. This is a minor effect. It's not very big, but the tendency is very clear. So this kind of changes in the world do something with our brain and with how we see ourselves. Well, I can put this up in quite complicated models, and don't be afraid, I will not go through these models, but in the center of this model are different brain processing units, like the amygdala I was mentioning before, and I have the other factors mentioning. And what I simply want to show is this is not a simple cause-action, cause-consequence relationship. These are complex interactions, and here are several representatives of people who know how complex systems work. So there's not an easy reasoning and an easy conclusion in this way, but we can learn that this system can change very fast in our times, which can have big consequences in politics. And I would say that media structures, social structures, and habit changes lead clear to a shift to right-wing opinions and anti-democratic and anti-socialistic attitudes, like scaring informations which are perceived differently, like overstimulation which turns down normal curiosity and interest. And the consequences might be really clear. The democratic and socialist brain is challenged and attacked, and we need to understand this better, and we need to develop countermeasures for it. So, conclusions and prospects of my papers is, well, the first is the human brain is basically able to act democratic and socialistic. We have a lot of evidence for this. It's also basically act to do other things. We know this, but it is principally we are built to be social. There's a clear distinction between a left-wing and a right-wing brain. They perceive the word different, and as one proponent, yes, Hibbing says, don't waste your breath to argue to really right-wing peoples because they will not listen. Argue to the moderate ones. The modern digitalized world triggers a shift to the right, and democracy and socialism is under attack. So we need progressive scientific development using modern theory and technology in this area. And there are only this slide left, nearly what to do. We have the science, we have the possibilities. We should organize and help to organize. We have to give informations. And we have to teach solidarity. Finally, I want only mention that this kind of work can only exist in a social environment, and I am a long-time member of the World Advanced Research Project together with Heinz Dietrich and Konstantin Sivkov. This is on the left side, and these are my groups in the right side in Norway, where I'm making a lot, and I'm proud to collaborate with the Chelyabinsk State University in investigations like this in a recent time. Thank you.